there are lots of, I think we'll move to the questions that everybody has put up now.
Sure.
There are many sort of comments on whatever you've spoken. So I'll read them out to you so that you can get an idea of how appreciative they are.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So Mr. Shetty says, very interesting discussion. It's great that your talk is fully based on scientific evidences. You're showing that science and spirituality go together. And also, Mr. Subbarao says, ask the question, but I think this is not something that we could answer. This is for the children to answer. It says these days we hear many children tend to leave their parents in senior old age homes. Why does this happen? Tribulations of modern life and stress. Would you like to take that? I don't know how we could. I mean, it's just a question of how you brought up and you know how you see it. Yeah.
I think so. I don't think there's a straightforward answer to it.
Right. Yeah.
There isn't.
And there's another, Sunita says, India as a country has too much population and hence everything is in short supply and people have to struggle for essential basic amenities in life, whereas the Western world, basic necessities are a given. So I don't know how this helps in the longevity, because there are a lot of things in her book, in Sujata's book, where she talks about things where you don't need money or, there's no shortage of that. It's all in your mind, so you can actually, right?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. This is not about money. It is about having some time, but not a lot of time, right, Beenaji? What do you think? You read the book, right?
No. I think you were aligned, right? Then, just everything sort of falls into place as well.
I fully agree. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Mr. Shetty also has another question. Is there a correlation between human public health and planet health?
Absolutely. I think that's a really important question to ask, because we are interconnected. And I think in forgetting that is why we have this pandemic on our hands, because we've forgotten that, is why we're in the situation. So we need to connect environmental wellness with public wellness, with individual wellness, and work with the environment, because the scriptures tell us that Maya belongs to God; it doesn't belong to us. And here we are trying to subjugate Maya, subjugate nature, and it's a pointless exercise. And unfortunately, I was telling my children that I have a teenager and a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, and I said, you're going to have to deal with this in your lifetime again if we don't learn the lessons from this pandemic. So absolutely.
Yeah. I'd just like to add to that. There's a very interesting, quote from J. Krishnamurti, the famous philosopher, where he says, "What is society? It's I. It's every I that makes up society." So if you look after your health, automatically, public health is going to be better. So you just concentrate on yourself, and you make up society. So do whatever you require to need to do. And Bharat says, could you please throw light on the fact that uncooked raw or steamed food is the key input for longevity? Ongoing lifelong experience. No, I think that's his Gmail. Okay. So could you talk about that? Uncooked raw steamed food as being the key for longevity?
Not necessarily. So Ayurveda doesn't talk about eating, raw food at the exclusion of other of cooked. In fact, raw food can be, harder to digest. So I think a cooked food, being vegetarian most of the time, ideally all the time, being seasonal, being local, eating the way that your forefathers did, these are all useful, particularly in the Indian context, because it was our forefathers ate Ayurvedically. It was very scientific, the way that we ate, the order that we ate in, the combinations that we chose. Was all very scientific. All the spices have medicinal properties, so I would go with that. Yes.
And Gul Malani asks, do you feel that Ayurveda success in curing depends on the skill of the doctor?
Yeah, I think like any other medical practice, it's an art and a science. The art being based on experience, and general, I guess, the basic sort of ability of that particular doctor. And there are good Ayurvedic doctors and there are good allopathic doctors, right? And there are not so capable allopathic doctors and there are not so capable Ayurvedic doctors. Unfortunately, what has happened because of the way that because of our history and because of colonialization, um, we've run into a situation where Ayurvedic systems were systematically dismantled, and now we're at a place where when young people choose medicine, if they have if you have high enough grades, you go to the Western medical stream. If you don't have high enough grades, you go to the Ayurvedic stream. So now what you're doing essentially is that assuming high grades and um, ability correlate, you are taking people who are not that able into the Ayurvedic stream. That is one issue. The other is that people, I mean, it's true that you need to choose your doctor carefully. And I would use the same method that you would use for an allopathic doctor. So with an allopathic doctor, your friends recommend, you go by which hospital they're affiliated with. And I would do the same thing here. I would go with what friends recommend. I would choose what hospital they're affiliated with. I look at the years that they've been practicing. All the things that you look at when you go to, say, a surgeon or a specialized doctor. And finally, also, please trust your gut, whether it's an allopath or a homeopath or an Ayurved. You should listen to your body. Your body intelligence is very, very powerful. They did this wonderful study where they took a bunch of students and they asked them to play a game with cards. It was a very simple game, but one set of cards would give them higher returns than another set of cards. And they had these sensors on their palms when they were playing this game, and their palms started to sweat when they took the cards from the deck that would give them lower returns, which would make them lose more often. But it took them a while to actually stop taking cards from that deck. So it took because there was a dissonance, right? The brain couldn't figure out what was happening, but their primordial brain had figured it out already because their hands had started to sweat in response to the deck of cards that was not really working for them. So it's interesting how sometimes we don't feel, like this doctor is really treating me properly, or doesn't have the best bedside manners, or something is off. Please shop for the right kind of doctor if possible. And therefore the same goes with your Ayurveda. If you're feeling like, this is not, you're feeling suspicious, not based on your lack of belief in the system. And if you don't have belief in the system, it's not going to, that might stop it from working anyway. Because like I said, most people go to Ayurveda at the end after they've tried everything else out. And I would, and again, it's based on our belief system. So it's just unfortunate that we don't believe in it. And it is a dying art and science. And that's the unfortunate truth. But
yeah. So he thanks you for your clarity and expression. And Vijay Mirchandani has a comment to make. He says, humans are a product of this planet. We forget that and think of ourselves as being separate.
Very true. Very true.
Which is a spiritual statement. So yeah, that's true. Okay, so I don't see any more questions here, and we are really actually perfectly on time. It's 7:58. So if there's any last question anybody would like to ask, maybe you can unmute yourself and ask Doctor the question. Dr. Sujata, anybody?
I have one question, Doctor.
Yeah.
This is on the number of breaths you mentioned. Now, stress, you mentioned, increases the number of breaths you take. Active sports also does the same. So do they both have something similar in terms of longevity?
So my yoga teacher said something to me, which was interesting. She said, after every, physical activity that you engage in, that's sort of where your heart is sort of pumping. She said, do 5 minutes of shavasana. And that was her sort of response to that, because I'd asked her that question as well. And I haven't really gone into it more in depth, but I think that was her way of saying that's how you can balance it out, because then you'll take fewer number of breaths, right, in the same amount of time.
Right.
But
You also see some active sports person, they retire very young. They don't play that kind of sport for a long period. So I think it is draining them out, I guess.
yeah, no, they can't, also because they're physically unable to. You start to deteriorate in terms of being physically able to. But also, like, there are studies to show that people who, for example, are running marathons, right? So when you run one marathon, you increase your lifespan, and I think at 2 it's about the same, and then it starts to go down. So there is a link between expending that kind of energy and those number of breaths. But I don't know about athletes. I don't know what the research is.
Okay, thank you.
I think they just retire early so then they can maintain the rest of their breaths, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sujata. It's been wonderful to talk to you, because you've sort of brought out all the, the research and everything, and backed everything that you've said practically with some scientific data. And so it makes it all the more meaningful. Thank you so much. I would like to call Prem, Mr. Prem Nath, our Director, IT and Media, to give the vote of thanks.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Binaji, and thank you, Dr. Sujata, for this excellent session on the book that you've written, and you've touched upon various topics, which has given us all a few points to think about and do some course correction in our life. You touched upon the self-awareness and being mindfulness, being in a growth mindset. I think that was quite powerful. I think where we all need to focus. And the other point is also focus on the silver lining, rather than looking at the negative part of it. So I think you covered a lot of points, and I think it's a very, very useful session. And on behalf of Rtambhara, I really thank you for taking your time and sharing these useful inputs, and I look forward for having interactions with you again in the future. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
So just a few announcements on the upcoming programs before we end. Thank you to all our participants and distinguished guests for your valuable presence this evening. Please join us for our 2 upcoming programs. On Sunday, 1st November, we have a yoga program by Umesh Dagat. Starts at 7 a.m. in the morning. It's based on boosting your immunity. And on Friday, we have a very special program, 6th November. Please block your dates. We have a very special panel discussion with very distinguished guests speaking to us on evolution of global consciousness. The program is going to be moderated by our program director, Sri Krishnapani K.C. Raju. And we have some very eminent people talking to us, Mr. Hari Kiran, founder of the Indic Academy, Dr. Anuradha Chaudhary, who's faculty of the Department of Science and Humanities at IIT Kharagpur, Mr. Jeff Genung, he's the co-founder and president of Contemplative Life, and Mr. B. Alan Wallace, famous author and founder of the Santa Barbara Institute for Consciousness Studies. So please block your dates for these upcoming webinars, and we look forward to your presence again on Sunday and then again on Friday, 6th. Thank you so much. Thank you once again, Dr. Sujata. It was very, very enlightening, and I think we all took away a lot of stuff from your talk today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Binaji. Thank you for finding me. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.